a challenge, but I think also a necessity, because ultimately it will benefit the community and the clients that you're working with or students. So I think, yeah, going to conferences or attending webinars or keeping track of all these things, whether it's through Facebook groups or anything else, I think that's very valuable, not only for your professional education and development, but also benefiting your clients and students.
Welcome, Michiel. It is so nice to have you on the podcast. You and I have spoken a little bit before about your incredible product, OKO, and I cannot wait to share more about that, but also more about you and your team and your journey to get to where you are and how fast this has all exploded because it's such a great product. Can you tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and thanks for having me, Cassandra. Maybe I'll quickly start off with the introduction of myself, because I originally was born in Belgium, in Europe, in a beautiful town which is called Antwerp. But I'm 26 years old. I have a master's degree in computer science. And about 2 years and 1 month ago, we founded our company, which is called AYES, which is spelled AYES and not EYES. And the reason why we got into the community is basically that we have a blind family friend back in Belgium. His name is Kenny. And we actually got inspired by him, just generally knowing his challenges navigating outdoors. And as a computer scientist with a lot of expertise in AI, we started our company together with two other co-founders. One of them is my brother, actually, my other brother. He did the similar course, so I actually stepped into his foot. And then my second or third co-founder is actually one of my best friends from high school. Again, also a computer scientist, so we're all AI nerds, if you want to call us. And we actually had, from day one, the vision, if, for example, a car can drive autonomously on the highway, what is it, 50, 60 miles an hour, and is using also AI to interpret their visual surroundings. We also had the idea then to go to bring that back, but then to guide blind and low vision people more safer and more independently from A to B.
I think that it's really interesting and important to note that you grew up with somebody who has a visual impairment, and not that this person was obligated to be in your life. They weren't, a family member or yourself. They were your friend. And you're 26. Oh my gosh. I just love that, because you're going to go so far. And you're so motivated to take what you learned in college, you and two other co-founders, to make the world a better place for people with visual impairments. What was that like as you were going through college? Did you have it kind of in the back of your mind that this is what you wanted to do? Or was it just from conversations? Tell me about, the conversations and how the startup began.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, quite naturally, as a young child, I was already a very car enthusiastic. So I think at what was it, 2015, when Tesla became a big thing, I really liked their Teslas, and also the vision of all the self-driving vehicles. But I think during my master, I did a thesis related to also self-driving cars. And then actually upon graduating, I started working at another startup for 10 months. And basically what they were doing is that they were going to teach every vehicle on rails, whether it's a tram or a train, to drive autonomously, similarly to cars, for example. So quite naturally, from doing the thesis or my master thesis in self-driving cars and working for 10 months at a startup that was doing self-driving trains, I got inspired by where can this technology go further as well. And that got me thinking with indeed our family friend, which is actually a friend of my parents, not from my inner circle, let's say. So I got in touch with him again, validating what my idea was from what if we can use this technology and what are your challenges? So I went even deeper. And I think one of the let's say crucial challenges that we then identified was being able to cross a street. And of course, I mean, as being sighted myself, I wasn't fully aware of how hard it was and how inaccessible a lot of cities in Belgium were. And then we did a lot of research and came to the understanding that it's just a global issue. And what I'm telling is like the availability of the accessible pedestrian signal. So the push button that announces the walk or don't walk. I think in my country, so in Belgium, which is separated in two parts, like a Flemish region and a French region. And in the Flemish region, there's 15% of all signals that are accessible. So the other 85 weren't accessible. So that really triggered us to think about out of the box, like what do blind and low vision people already have, which was a smartphone. And we said like, hey, why can't we build an application that uses then your smartphone to do the same job, which is identifying the signal and conveying what the status is in a sense. But I think bringing back to the, let's say, the initial phase was we had the idea actually to build our own hardware. So what we've done all the way in the beginning, and we weren't full time, so it was still like a hobby project, which we did like in parallel with our full time job and in the weekends. So what we actually built as a certain prototype was a chest-worn mini computer, which we built ourselves. And basically it did the same thing, right? We identified with the camera what the status was. And then we had like a very old speaker from a certain radio that my dad had. And we soldered it through that mini computer to, in a sense, also like announce the walk or don't walk signal. So that was all the way in the beginning. But upon like going full time, because we all quit our jobs, we immediately went to build a smartphone app because we had the vision that the only way to push this technology forward was going to be able to do that through a mainstream product instead of building an expensive hardware tool, which ultimately, into my opinion, of course, is not really how it should be done. So that's why we wanted to focus on software. And all in all, we're software guys. So it would have been too hard to make that hardware go live.
You being able to help people with visual impairments to make safer decisions for themselves really helps to increase their quality of life. And do you find that it helps them to get across the street faster?
Faster, I haven't got that testimonial yet, but I think overall, I think three key pillars is more safe, more confident, and more independent. Yeah, I think we had some crazy testimonials coming in. I'll maybe just focus on the US because that's like lately the testimonials that we're getting in. But most people, like just generally, sometimes are not able or not comfortable enough to cross a certain intersection, whether it's busy or dangerous. So a lot of people have like said like, I'm now able to like go to the farmer's market right across the street, which beforehand, before having the technology, I wasn't comfortable just crossing there. And right now with such a simple product in a sense, I just know whenever my walk cue is on. And I think even, which is even more emotional, I would say, is that some people, I know two of them. One is in Chicago and the other one is in Denver, Colorado. But those two people were previously hit by a car or a cat and seriously injured. And right now they again feel so much more confident, more safe. And actually, one of those two, he mentioned like it has freed up my partner to not accompany myself throughout all my travels, like whether it's to the bakery, the Starbucks, or whatever you're doing. So again, it's a simple tool, but the impact has been enormous so far, and that's really what like motivates us to build a better product and just in a sense try to get it to as many as people as possible.
Can you share, what is OKO and I guess let's just start there. What is OKO? And then we'll get into how people can find it and how much it costs and all that jazz, because you guys as people in my community, that I don't, believe in pushing a bunch of products on you, but Michiel and I have really been talking about how we can get you the information that you need to make this, work for you. So I actually have some questions past this, but yeah, let's start at the beginning, my friend.
Yeah, sure. So to start off with, of course, OKO is a mobile application that runs on your smartphone. It's right now only on iPhone, and I'll touch base on that, like why that decision has come across. But basically, what we do with the OKO application is that we use your smartphone back camera to identify the pedestrian signal. And I think in the United States there has been changes over the past decades, but to provide a good definition on what a pedestrian signal is the box that has the white or green walking man to indicate the walk signal, and then a red or orange hand to indicate the don't walk signal. And then there's exactly also a third status, which is a countdown or clearance phase, which is actually a flashing red hand or the red hand with the amount of seconds left to cross. So that's what our system recognizes. And ultimately, what we do is we bring back that visual information and translate that into three types of feedbacks. One of them is an audible cue. So we produce a very fast tone through the phone to indicate the walk signal, for example, and a very slow sound to indicate do not walk is on. And similarly is true for the vibrations. So very fast vibrations through the phone to indicate walk, and very slow to indicate do not walk. And the reason why we chose that design of feedback is to make it very easy to use both the physical APS or what we like to call more like a handheld mobile APS. Because of course, what most APSs in the real world do is they also have that fast ticking sound. So that's why we chose it to make it, let's say, in a learning curve, very easy to get a hold and get a grasp on what we do. And then a third mechanism or feedback is also visual. So what we do is, again, when the walk signal, for example, is detected, there's a green overlay in the application. So people with low vision can still maximize their wrist fuses by looking at the phone as opposed to trying to interpret the light a couple of feet away. And I think what, of course, the primary focus is and functionality is getting the status in. But I think a secondary thing to that as well is something that we've learned by talking to the community, which we've been doing all along. But also, in addition to that, is what we value so much is orientation and mobility specialists, of course. And what we've actually learned is that it can also provide two things. One being an extra sense of orientation. And before talking about orientation, is I think what we've discovered as well is how to hold your phone, because you ultimately are using your camera. What we've learned is that the best way to use the technology is to put your phone with the screen against your chest, at chest level, of course. And what it enables to is that your camera is elevated at a certain height to capture the light quite easily across the street. But more so for the orientation aspect, if from O&M your parallel street is on your right, you're at an intersection. What we've learned is that you can start scanning away from your intersection. So by gradually moving your body to the right, you'll at some point see, or the service will see, the light at the other side of the road, and immediately then will provide you which status is on, whether it's walk or don't walk. And the reason why I'm telling you this is that orientation even got beyond that, because what we've learned as well is that veering off while crossing the street can also be challenging. So quite some people continue to hold their phone at chest level while crossing, and the moment that you're veering off left or right will also be the moment that you will lose a signal, and hence the feedback will stop. And that gives let's say the person or the user an indication of them veering off left or right. And by doing that same rotation of your upper body, you can again reorient yourself to be able to reach the other side of the road in a straight line. So I think it really depends on user to user, but that's more or less what we right now offer.
That's really cool. Do you notice that people, I was trying to record us. Do you notice that users, how do I say this? is there a difference in the efficacy of the app if they hold it with their hand or if they have like a little string thing with, you know what I'm saying? Like a little necklace.
Yeah, the lanyard. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's for added ease of use, let's say, and comfort that
Mhm.
a lot of people use a lanyard or a pouch. I mean, they come in all sorts, um, or they just want to carry their phone with their bare hand. I think ultimately, given that you're also using maybe a wide cane or a guide dog, or just you want to have a free hand to carry anything, it's indeed very nice to have that hands-free approach. But again, it's up to the user, and most naturally, the lanyard is also the phone hangs most of the time also around chest level. So that's why we came up with like the idea of putting the phone there, whether it's with your own hand or the case.
And just to clarify, does OKO work at intersections that don't have a pet head?
Right now, no. So it indeed requires the pet head, and again, that brings me back to the definition with like the red hand icon and the white walking person icon. Because something again that we've learned through history of traffic engineers is that some lights in the United States still have the letters spelled like "don't walk" and "walk." I do need to say I haven't seen one of them myself, but some users have mentioned this like, hey, it's not working at this intersection. Why is that? And then most often we go to Google Street View to see what's going on. And then we stumble upon the fact that indeed it's an old signal. But of course, as time changes and traffic engineers install new ones, that will adopt and that will be solved as well. So right now we're pretty much focused on what we do and not trying to include all signals because ultimately they will be replaced with newer ones.
Gotcha. So I know we're going to go into the future and where you guys are going, but I'm personally curious if, you know, you're working with so few intersections, you know, in the United States. Do you have plans, or in your technology brain, is it even possible to think about a future where your app might be able to detect your nearest parallel traffic instead of the stationary walk signal?
And you mean with nearest parallel traffic, like cars going? Okay. Yeah, I think most definitely. I think with AI and just using your camera, basically anything is possible, right? I think our trade-off there that we need to make is that we don't want to be too verbose. So we're always trying to maximize the efficiency of what information that we want to convey while always minimizing the amount of feedback that you get, whether it's audible or haptic or visual even. So I think we always are trying to find intuitive ways to uh, produce anything or inform you about anything. I think the traffic flow or your parallel traffic flow is a bit harder because the camera is always looking forward, and then it requires also the person itself to then do like whether it's to the right or the left to rotate and try to scan that. And I think that complexity tends to then increase because yeah, we need to inform you about then cars, and you need to link it with your own mental map. And I'm not sure if that makes sense, but there's other cool things that we're thinking about as well.
With your view of the future and your technology brain and caring about people with visual impairments, honestly, in your heart of hearts, tell me, tell me where you're going. What's going on?
Yeah, sure, sure. I think from day one we always had a bigger vision to ultimately assist people like the moment that they get out their doors to yeah wherever they want to go, whether it's a Starbucks, a medical appointment, or anything else. But I think in general, transportation is I mean is a barrier for a lot of people to reach that destination. Because if you think about like a normal GPS application, a Google Maps, Apple Maps, they're built for cars and not necessarily for pedestrians. So as sighted people, if turn by turn navigation is on, for example, we always still need to see with our own eyes, like, is it here right, or where's the door, or any other cue. So that's where our AI will come into, like, bridge both GPS information and AI. So what I mean by that is we envision that people use our services by entering your location. We will get you there more safe and more independent. So for example, what we do with OKO right now is that imagine that you're nearing an intersection, which is on your route, that we automatically enable the camera, enable the AI to, if you're holding your phone upright, that you will be able to catch the light. But similarly for other things, and I think what we're a bit focused on right now is more getting information on the intersection level. Again, looking at GPS apps like Google, they don't offer the information to the user whether the intersection that you're approaching is signalized, is it a stop controlled, how many lanes you have, is there a middle line? So all the information that we've gathered and learned that can be crucial is something that we want to build into the application. On top of like building on top of Google Maps, for example, and then at the same time also assisting locally on demand with the camera, whether it's the recognition of a pedestrian signal or getting people on a bus. Because I haven't been talking about a functionality that only exists in Belgium. I think probably it's the first time I'll be talking about it on a podcast or a webinar. But what we've done in Belgium is that we also recognize buses. So what that comes down to is that we read out the LED box, which is in front of the bus, like the line number and the destination a certain bus goes to. And ultimately, we provide that as an audible feedback. So people understand if they're standing at a bus stop, which will be also part of the challenge to get to the bus stop. That's one thing. But if you're there, what we can do is we can, again, with AI, read out and announce which bus there is, instead of always trying to rely on either someone else at the bus stop or the bus driver, which sometimes are not as polite as we might think. So again, there's so many interesting things that we can do. And I think that's just a part of like the bigger vision, because ultimately, as we're right now focused on navigating blind and low vision pedestrians, we want to open that up as well for other types of disabilities, whether you're in a wheelchair or anything else. Because that's also something like, how do you know if you're going into a certain store that it will be wheelchair accessible, let alone that you will reach that store by having curb ramps along your journey. So having to, or being able to map that and bring that information to those persons is pretty interesting and something that we really want to focus and stand out from any other application that is not necessarily like taking into consideration the needs of the disability community, which is fascinating to me because in the United States, almost 1 out of 4 Americans identify as having a certain disability. So it is a big market, and trying to capture and consolidate all their challenges is pretty interesting.
Oh my gosh, go you. As we wrap up, I want to ask you the question that we get to ask everybody on this podcast. I really believe in, we don't have to be perfect every moment, every step of the day. We really just have to take a step forward. If you were to give our community one piece of advice for how they can take a step forward to becoming, better orientation and mobility specialists or teachers of students with visual impairments, what would you say that would be?
Oh, that's a good question. Especially being a vendor, maybe it will be a bit biased, but I think technology, and really right now being with the rise of AI and not only like what we're doing, but also generative AI with ChatGPT and OpenAI, I think there's a lot of things going on. So I think keeping track of all the technology is a challenge, but I think also a necessity, because ultimately it will benefit the community and the clients that you're working with or students. So I think, going to conferences or attending webinars or keeping track of all these things, whether it's through Facebook groups or anything else, I think that's very valuable, not only for your professional education and development, but also benefiting your clients and students.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michiel. It has been such a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cassandra, for having me. It's been a pleasure.